Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. It was a crisp autumn evening when I found myself seated at the far end of a long, gleaming table in my parents' sprawling country estate. The chandeliers above sparkled, reflecting the rich reds and golds of the decorations that had been carefully placed for the occasion. My family was gathered to celebrate my younger brother, Eric, who had finally achieved the entrepreneurial success everyone had been waiting for. My name is Carolyn. I'm 36 years old. I live abroad, far from the world of dinners like this. And yet, here I was, enduring yet another family gathering, listening to Eric's praises, which, as usual, came at my expense. Eric stood at the head of the table, his broad grin filling the room as he lifted his glass. "Here's to family," he said with an exaggerated flourish. "Here's to legacy. Here's to the future we build together." Everyone raised their glasses, their smiles forced but practiced. But my hand stayed still on my lap. I wasn't part of the future he was toasting. My seat, as always, was at the farthest point from him, as if my presence didn't matter. My parents, who should have been proud of me, barely acknowledged my existence. They fawned over Eric, praising his company, his clever ideas. I kept my gaze fixed on my glass, wishing I could slip away unnoticed. "Carolyn?" My aunt's voice pierced through the noise, her tone overly sweet. "How's that little teaching job you have? I hear it's so nice, living abroad and all that. Must be a quaint." I fought the urge to roll my eyes. "It's fulfilling," I said quietly, but my voice felt distant, detached. I wasn't about to explain the real work I was doing, the humanitarian efforts in conflict zones, in places where people needed a voice and a hand to pull them from the wreckage of their lives. Number that would never be understood here. "You're so modest," my cousin chimed in, her voice dripping with faux admiration. "So humble, even with all the time you've spent overseas." The words stung, but I swallowed them down. I wasn't about to let them see how much it hurt. Not anymore. The chatter continued, but I was losing focus, my thoughts drifting away. I glanced at Eric, who was still basking in the spotlight, his smile as wide as ever, his ego inflated by the endless praise. He was the golden child, the one who had always been the success in the family, the one everyone relied on to carry the legacy of our name. It had always been this way. Since we were kids, I had sacrificed my happiness to allow him to shine. I had put aside my dreams, my needs, everything for the sake of family. And for what? To sit here, invisible, at the far end of a table, pretending that his success meant anything to me. Just then, the sound of a projector whirring to life behind the bar caught everyone's attention. I looked up just as the screen flickered, and the words, "World's Youngest Humanitarian Award Winner Announced," flashed across the screen. A jolt went through me as my face appeared on the screen, clear as day. It felt like the room stopped breathing. There was a long pause. Glasses were frozen in midair. My family, all of them, stared at the screen in stunned silence. And then, the realization hit. Eric's smile faltered. He cleared his throat, trying to cover his discomfort. But the damage had been done. "Carolyn," my mother said in a strained voice, but it wasn't an apology. It was more like she was trying to piece together something she didn't quite understand. I stood up, my legs a little shaky. The silence hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. "Excuse me," I muttered, barely able to hide the rush of emotions swelling up inside me. I turned and walked out of the room. The sounds of their murmurs and confused voices followed me, but I didn't care. This was my moment, not Eric's, not theirs. I was finally being seen. And all of them, all those years of neglect, those words they whispered behind my back, all of it had come to a head. I wasn't invisible anymore. The cold air hit my skin the moment I stepped outside. It was a relief. I needed to feel the world outside that suffocating house. The night was silent, save for the rustling of dry leaves being carried by the wind. I walked without thinking, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The last thing I wanted was to be surrounded by my family's shock and confusion. I wasn't sure what I expected from the evening, but it sure wasn't that. I'd spent so long being the invisible one. And now, suddenly, I was the one they couldn't ignore. The world seemed to turn on its head in that moment, and all I could do was walk away from it. I didn't want to go back to the house I had left behind years ago. Instead, I made my way to my small apartment, tucked above a bakery on the quieter side of the city. It wasn't home, at least not in the traditional sense. It didn't have the warmth, the familiarity of family gatherings, or the comfort of a place you could rely on. But it was mine, and that's what mattered now. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the faint smell of baked goods mingling with the sterile cold of the apartment. It was small, bare, but I liked it that way. I didn't want anything to tie me down, nothing that would make me feel like I was part of a life I no longer recognized. I dropped my keys on the counter and made my way to the couch. My laptop was sitting there, untouched, waiting for me. I opened it and stared at the screen for a few moments, unsure of where to start. But then I saw it. A news segment. It wasn't about the award I had just been announced as the winner of. It was something different, something I hadn't expected. Footage from a project I led years ago, back when my life felt like it still had a purpose. The segment showed war-torn regions, the desperate faces of those we had helped, the lives we had saved. But then, as I continued watching, something caught my eye. Classified footage that shouldn't have been shown, not in a million years. It was my operation, my team's work, the strategies I had worked so hard to develop, but they were being broadcast like it was some kind of public achievement. Number worse, someone had leaked it. I froze, my mind racing. I clicked on the link to the story that was spreading online, trying to piece together the puzzle that didn't make sense. The footage was not just an accidental leak, it was deliberate. Someone had made sure it got out. My stomach twisted, the growing sense of dread tightening around my chest. Who would do this? And more importantly, why? The screen shifted again, and this time, I saw the name I hadn't expected. Eric. My brother's face filled the screen, his confident smile, his usual bravado. And then it hit me. He was talking about the project. He was talking about my mission. The exact words I had used during a confidential debrief were coming out of his mouth, his voice smooth and rehearsed. He was taking credit for something he had never been a part of. He was using my work to build his own public image, to elevate himself in a world that saw him as just another businessman. I felt the blood drain from my face as I watched him speak. But then, the horror deepened. The footage didn't stop there. I traced the leak back, following the breadcrumbs, and as I did, my mind slowly connected the dots. Eric had access to the same confidential materials I had been entrusted with. He had somehow gotten his hands on documents, plans, everything that was supposed to be secured. It wasn't just a few offhand comments or a stolen strategy. It was my life's work, exposed to the world, and I had no idea how. But I did know one thing. Someone had given him access. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. My breath came in shallow gasps. The betrayal was worse than I could have imagined. I had always known Eric to be self-serving, but this was something else entirely. He wasn't just using my work. He was taking it and presenting it as his own, turning my quiet, meaningful contributions into a commodity for his benefit. And what hurt the most was that no one in the family would question it. They would only applaud him, just like they always had. I sat there for a long time, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. There was no going back, no pretending I didn't see this for what it was. Eric was not the only one who had manipulated the narrative. I had allowed it to happen. I had let him walk all over me year after year, thinking that family was enough to make the sacrifices worth it. But now, all of that had crumbled. My silence, my sacrifices, my years of being the quiet, obedient sister. It had all been used to fuel his rise, to prop up his fake legacy. I stood up suddenly, the resolve in my chest solidifying. I was done. This was my story now, and I would reclaim it, no matter what it took. But as I paced the room, my phone buzzed, cutting through the silence. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Eric. My stomach churned. I hesitated before opening it. "Caroline, I need to talk. It's about the award, and everything else. Please don't make any hasty decisions. You know you've always been part of this family's legacy." I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Legacy? He was talking about legacy after everything he had just done. I deleted the message. He wouldn't get that satisfaction, not anymore. The next morning, I found myself driving back to the house I hadn't visited in years, the house that used to feel like home. Now, it felt like a relic from a past life. The same front yard with its perfectly trimmed hedges, the same mailbox that always seemed to hang a little crooked. But nothing about this place felt familiar anymore. I had always been the one to leave. My brother had made it clear that he was the heir to the family legacy, and I had been content with that role. The quiet one, the invisible one. But now, as I parked in front of the house and stared at the windows, I realized how much of myself I had lost in those years of silence. I rang the doorbell, a nervous knot forming in my stomach. My mom answered, her smile faltering as she saw me standing there. She quickly masked it, but I could see the awkwardness in her eyes. "Caroline, it's been a while," she said, her voice tight. "What brings you here?" I stepped past her without a word. "I need to talk to you both," I said, my tone colder than I meant it to be. About the family, about everything. She closed the door behind me with a soft click. The house was exactly how I remembered it. Comfortable, lived in, but eerily distant. The scent of old wood and freshly brewed coffee hung in the air. My father was sitting in the living room, half-heartedly reading the paper. His eyes shifted to me as I walked in, but he didn't bother standing up. I didn't waste time. "I need to see something." My mom's eyes darted to my dad before she looked back at me. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "What do you mean, Caroline?" "I want to see the family photos," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "All of them." My dad's brow furrowed. "Why?" "I need to see them," I repeated. I wasn't asking for permission, and I wasn't giving them the chance to make excuses. My mom sighed and rose from her seat. "The albums are upstairs, but why now?" "Just show me," I insisted. And I watched her leave the room without another word. I didn't have to wait long. She returned with a dusty old album, its cover worn from years of handling. She handed it to me reluctantly, and I opened it immediately. The first few pages were filled with pictures from my childhood, family vacations, birthday parties, all the usual family memories. But then, the images began to change. I flipped through the pages, each one becoming more painful to look at. Every single photo, every single one, was of Eric. His smiling face, his triumphs, his birthday celebrations, his first car, his graduation, his wedding, and more. My heart sank as I turned the pages faster, searching, desperately hoping to find something, anything, of me. Nothing. There was nothing. The photos stopped abruptly after Eric's wedding. I flipped to the next page, expecting more. But no, the album ended there. My life, my family, my presence, erased. It was as if I had never existed. I felt a cold emptiness in my chest as I stared at the last page. The photo of Eric and his new wife laughing, surrounded by friends and family. I closed the album with a sharp snap and turned to my parents, their faces unreadable, their eyes avoiding mine. "Where's my picture?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where are the photos of me?" My mom looked away, her voice shaky. "You know how it is, Caroline. We didn't think to keep..." "Didn't think?" I cut her off. "You didn't think? I was your daughter. You didn't think to keep pictures of your daughter?" My father finally put down his paper, his face pale. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes was one I had seen too many times before. Discomfort, avoidance. He never stepped in when my mother or Eric made me feel like I didn't belong. He was the silent observer, the passive participant in all of it. "I did everything for this family," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of all the years of silence, of sacrifice. "I've paid for things I shouldn't have, taken on responsibilities that weren't mine, and for what? To be erased? To be forgotten?" My mother looked like she might say something, but no words came out. Instead, she stood there, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I could see the faint flicker of regret in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. It never was. I turned and walked toward the attic stairs. My parents didn't stop me, didn't say a word as I climbed up to the storage area I used to frequent as a kid. The attic smelled of dust and old books. There were boxes everywhere, stacked haphazardly, filled with forgotten memories. I started searching through them, not caring about the mess I was making. Finally, I found it. A large, damp trunk sitting in the corner, wedged between two cardboard boxes. I pried it open. Inside were my old field gear, my uniform from the humanitarian missions I had led, the ones my family had always dismissed as nothing. They were shoved into the trunk, crumpled and decaying as if they were nothing more than a nuisance. I pulled the gear out slowly, my fingers tracing the faded patches, the worn edges of the jacket. I felt something snap inside me. This wasn't just about photos. This wasn't just about being left out. This was about the years of emotional neglect, of being used and dismissed, of being told I was lesser than Eric, lesser than the family's narrative. I turned to face my parents, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "I was never enough for you, was I?" I said, my voice barely audible. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, never enough. My mom stood frozen, unable to answer. My father just stared at me, his face unreadable. "Now I get it," I whispered, my heart heavy with the realization. "You never cared. You never will." And with that, I walked out, the heavy trunk in my hands, and I left them behind, finally, completely. The streets blurred around me as I drove through the city. The weight of what I had just uncovered, Eric's betrayal, the fact that he had used my work, my life's dedication, to build a false image of success, felt like a stone in my chest. The anger was still fresh, a raw, burning sensation that kept me moving. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't sit in my apartment any longer. I needed answers. I needed to fix this, to understand how far Eric's manipulations reached and who was behind it. I pulled up to a nondescript building on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much to look at, just a rundown old bookstore with a flickering neon sign. But behind that sign, behind the thick walls of books, was Noah, a tech specialist I had once worked with on a few sensitive projects. He wasn't someone you went to for a cup of coffee, but when you needed something that couldn't be found through regular channels, Noah was your guy. I pressed the buzzer at the door and waited. Seconds later, the door clicked open. Noah stood on the other side, wearing his usual black hoodie and an unamused look. His place always looked like a hacker's den, half-destroyed furniture, an endless array of monitors and cables, and the faint hum of computers running on overdrive. "Caroline," Noah said, his voice a bit of a surprise after so much silence between us. "You look like you're about to burn something down." I forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. Maybe just my brother's life. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment further. Instead, he motioned for me to follow him into the back of the cluttered space, where a few chairs were shoved in front of another set of screens. "What's the deal?" he asked, his fingers already hovering over his keyboard. "Eric's been using my humanitarian work. Everything I've done, all the strategies I've developed for missions in conflict zones. He's taking credit for it," I said, my voice low and steady. "Someone gave him access to my files. Someone with clearance." Noah leaned back, his fingers tapping lightly against his desk. "Interesting. So you want me to find out how far it goes?" "Exactly." I moved closer to the desk, my eyes fixed on the array of screens Noah had open. He was already starting to pull up encrypted databases, connecting dots faster than I could even keep up. "So you want to know who's been leaking stuff to Eric," Noah muttered, half to himself. But his fingers were already flying across the keyboard. "I can get into his accounts, see what he's been accessing. But, Caroline..." He paused and looked at me, his eyes serious. "This is bigger than your brother, right? This isn't just about him playing hero with your life's work. Someone gave him access. Someone wanted this to happen." I nodded. "I think it goes beyond Eric. He's a puppet. Someone's pulling the strings. And I need to know who." Noah's eyes flicked back to the screens, and within seconds, he was pulling up security footage, encrypted files, and communications that had been masked from the public. He opened a secure network file, and I saw my name pop up in a list of high-level humanitarian operations. My breath hitched as I saw the list of encrypted documents, ones I'd assumed were locked tight. Names and locations of safe houses I had helped set up for refugees, mission debriefs, confidential meeting notes. All of it now exposed in front of me. "This isn't just a leak," Noah said, his voice now low, almost grim. "This is a hack, a full-on breach. Whoever did this got deep into the system." My pulse quickened. "Do you think they know how much Eric's involved?" "No way," Noah replied quickly. "He's too low level for them to care about him, but this is big. And I have a feeling your brother is just the beginning of this." I leaned forward, my mind racing as I took in what he was saying. What do you mean? Noah said, pulling up a series of encrypted emails. This goes beyond just access. There's someone else involved. Someone who's been setting up these documents to be fed to your brother's company. I'm looking at traces of financial transfers, cleared invoices, all with a name that's connected to this. Dr. Helena Vance. I blinked, trying to process the name. Dr. Vance was a name I hadn't heard in years. She was one of my former project directors, someone I trusted, someone I had worked with when I was first developing the humanitarian protocols. But she'd left the sector years ago to take on higher-paying jobs in private organizations. I hadn't heard from her since. No way, I muttered, shaking my head. Helena, she's been gone forever. Doesn't matter, Noah replied, his tone colder now. She's been in this for months. I'm seeing her signature on every major transfer, every system breach. She's been feeding Eric's team your information for corporate contracts. Looks like she's building something tied to a powerful AI system they've been developing. One without ethical safeguards. I felt the blood drain from my face. No, this can't be happening. It's happening, Noah confirmed, his fingers continuing to fly over the keys. And this isn't just about corporate greed. This is a full-on takeover of your work. They're weaponizing it. They're turning your humanitarian efforts into something else entirely. I was silent for a long moment, trying to wrap my mind around the depth of the betrayal. Dr. Vance had been like a mentor to me. She'd always told me she believed in my work. To find out she had been orchestrating this all along, using my strategies, my ideas, and now, through Eric, she was planning to sell it all to the highest bidder. It made me sick. What do we do? I asked, my voice quieter now. Noah paused, looking at me with a heavy expression. We take her down, but we'll need more than just this. We need a plan. We need the data. And most importantly, we need to stop Eric before he's in too deep. I stared at the screen in front of me, my mind racing. We'll need evidence, something concrete. I'm already working on it, Noah replied, his tone decisive. But you'll have to act fast. I'm not the only one who's going to want to stop this. I nodded, the weight of what was to come sinking in. I wasn't going to let them use my work for something like this. I had spent years building this, giving it everything I had. Now it was time to take back control. The drive to the Federal Review Office was a blur. My mind was consumed with the revelation about Dr. Vance, the AI system, and the magnitude of what I was about to face. My body felt numb, like I was moving through quicksand, each step dragging me further into a web I hadn't even fully realized was there. I arrived at the building an hour later. It loomed in front of me, cold, gray, and imposing, the kind of place where secrets were kept, deals were made, and lives were changed with the flip of a pen. The security guards greeted me with a polite nod, but their eyes didn't mask the weight of what was happening. The world I had worked so hard to build, the work I had fought for, was being torn down piece by piece. I walked through the front doors, my heart racing, and made my way to the elevator. When I stepped inside, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished metal. My eyes were hard, determined, but there was a flicker of fear behind them, fear that this would be the moment everything unraveled, that the people behind this whole scheme would pull me into their game, forcing me to play by their rules. The elevator doors opened to the sterile, fluorescent-lit halls of the review office. A woman at the front desk greeted me. Her smile was professional, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She handed me a visitor badge and instructed me to take a seat in the waiting area. The room was quiet, too quiet. It felt like I was sitting on a bomb. I waited for what felt like hours, though it was only a matter of minutes before a man in a sharp suit approached me. His face was unreadable, his posture rigid. Lieutenant Clark. Ms. Anderson, he asked, his voice measured as though he had already made up his mind about me. I nodded, standing to meet him. His cold gaze raked over me as if I was already guilty. Follow me, he instructed, turning on his heel and leading me down the hall. My shoes clicked loudly against the linoleum, a constant reminder of how alone I felt in this moment. We entered a small, glass-walled room with a table in the center. There were 2 chairs across from each other. I sat down, trying to steady my breath. I knew why I was here. I had known the moment I walked in. Clark sat across from me, his eyes never leaving mine. There was a slight smugness to his demeanor, the kind that comes from someone who thinks they have already won. "I'm going to be straight with you, Ms. Anderson," he began, flipping open a folder in front of him. "We have reason to believe you've accessed classified systems without proper clearance. You're listed as the source of a security breach involving sensitive AI data, unauthorized transfers of information from your personal accounts to multiple external contacts. Your credentials were used to bypass security measures." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Someone had set me up, and I knew exactly who. "I haven't accessed anything illegally," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the panic threatening to rise in my throat. "This is a mistake." Clark didn't seem convinced. He slid a series of documents across the table. "These are the access logs. Your biometric data matches the ones found in the system breach. You were the one who signed off on these transfers." I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the documents. They looked real, too real. The dates matched my schedule, the times, everything. I knew there was no way this could be a mistake. I hadn't accessed the systems. Someone had forged my credentials. But who? Dr. Vance, Eric. They were using my work to further their own agenda, and now they were framing me for the very breach they orchestrated. "Lieutenant, I swear to you, I did not access any of these systems," I insisted, my voice harder now. "Someone's framing me. They're using my credentials." Clark's expression remained unchanged. "You're a whistleblower, Ms. Anderson?" He paused, watching me closely. "Because it's looking like you're the one who breached security. That's a felony. You're looking at some serious charges." My hands tightened on the edge of the table. I could feel the walls closing in. "You're making a mistake," I repeated. But my voice was less sure this time. The fear was creeping in. I had worked so hard to build a career based on integrity. And now my name was being dragged through the mud by people who had no idea what it meant to do the right thing. Clark leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Do you know how serious this is, Ms. Anderson? You've exposed highly sensitive information. Your actions have put lives at risk. And now, you're telling me you didn't do it? That you're just some innocent victim in all this?" I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could speak, there was a knock at the door. Clark's eyes flickered to the window, and for a moment, I saw something, doubt maybe, flash across his face. He stood, walked to the door, and opened it. A man in a military uniform entered the room. He was older than Clark, but there was a sharpness to his presence that immediately commanded attention. His gaze landed on me, and I felt an immediate sense of recognition. "Lieutenant Clark," the man said, his voice low and steady. "I need a word with Ms. Anderson." Clark's eyes flickered between the two of us before he nodded and left the room, closing the door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy. I looked at the man, unsure of who he was. His presence was authoritative, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of familiarity, that made me wonder if he was here to help or to bury me even deeper. "Ms. Anderson," the man began, sitting down across from me. "My name is Colonel Foster. I've been following your case." I stiffened, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "Following my case?" I asked, my voice cautious. Foster didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, unmarked flash drive. He slid it across the table to me. "This will clear your name," he said simply. "There's evidence on there that shows someone has been forging your credentials. Someone inside the system. You need to act quickly. This isn't over." I stared at the flash drive, trying to process what he was telling me. My mind was spinning. This was my way out, but it was also my way into something much bigger than I had ever imagined. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. "What's your angle?" Foster leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Because, Ms. Anderson, there's more going on here than you realize, and I think you're the only one who can stop it." I left the review office with the weight of Colonel Foster's words still pressing heavily on my chest. The flash drive he had given me was a lifeline, the only proof I had that I wasn't the criminal they were trying to make me out to be. But I knew this was just the beginning. Whoever had orchestrated this scheme wasn't going to back down. They had pulled too many strings to let someone like me get in the way. Noah was waiting for me when I got to his place, his eyes scanning the contents of the drive, his fingers moving faster than I could follow on the keyboard. "So what did you find?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but the gnawing anxiety was impossible to hide. Noah didn't look up, his eyes locked on the screen. I'm seeing multiple forgeries. Whoever accessed your credentials has been manipulating the logs, erasing traces of their own involvement. They've covered their tracks well, but this drive's got enough evidence to bring everything crashing down. I sat down beside him, my heart pounding in my chest. The truth was getting closer, but so was the danger. Do you think it's just Eric behind this? Not a chance, Noah muttered, still engrossed in his work. This goes much deeper than your brother. Someone with more power than him is behind this. Someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the system. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. Dr. Vance's name kept coming back to me. Could she have orchestrated it all? She'd been the one to feed Eric the information after all. But was she working alone? Before I could ask Noah any more questions, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. A cold feeling settling in the pit of my stomach. We need to talk. Meet me at the estate. It's about your brother. The message had no signature, but I didn't need one to know who it was from. It was Eric. I turned to Noah. I need to go. I think this is it. I need to confront him. Noah looked up, his brow furrowed. Are you sure? It could be a trap. I don't care, I said firmly, standing up. I've been running from this family for years. I'm done. The drive back to the estate felt different this time. There was no hesitation in my chest. No fear. For the first time, I wasn't the person in the background, silently enduring everything. I was taking control, and I wasn't about to let Eric or anyone else use me as a pawn anymore. I pulled into the long, winding driveway that led up to the massive family estate, my hands gripping the wheel. The house loomed in front of me, cold and imposing, its windows dark and empty. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I knew Eric would be waiting for me. I walked straight into the foyer, my footsteps echoing off the marble floors. Eric was sitting at the bar, his back to me, a glass of whiskey in his hand. When he heard my footsteps, he didn't turn around. But I could feel his presence, the air of superiority that he always carried, as if the world revolved around him. You wanted to talk? I asked, my voice sharp. He slowly turned his chair to face me, his smile as smug as ever. Caroline, glad you could make it. I crossed my arms, narrowing my eyes. You've been using me, Eric. You've been using my work, my life's mission, to make yourself look good. You've stolen everything I've done and presented it as your own. And now, you're framing me for something I didn't do. Eric's grin didn't fade. If anything, it grew wider. You think I'm the one behind this? You've got it all wrong, sis. You've always been the quiet little shadow, haven't you? I'm just doing what needs to be done. I took a step forward, my voice low with fury. Don't pretend like you care about this family. You don't care about anyone but yourself. All you've ever done is use me, use us to get ahead. Eric didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, swirling the whiskey in his glass. And you think you're any different? You've been living this noble lie for years, Caroline, pretending that your little missions are saving the world. But look at you now. You've got nothing. Don't, I warned, my voice trembling with anger. Don't you dare talk about my work like you understand it. You've never had a clue what it's like to sacrifice everything, to be on the front lines, to actually make a difference. Eric's smile faltered for a split second, but then he recovered. You think you're the only one who's made sacrifices? You think I haven't worked just as hard to get to where I am? You want to be a hero, Caroline? Well, I'm just playing the game better than you. I stepped closer, my fists clenched. You don't get it. You never have. This isn't a game to me. This is real life. And you're going to ruin everything we've worked for just to make yourself feel important. Eric laughed, standing up from his chair. He looked down at me with that same dismissive gaze. You're so naive. This whole thing, the work you've done, the legacy you think you've built, none of it matters. The world doesn't care about your little cause. People like me, we're the ones who make things happen. His words stung, more than I cared to admit. But they also sparked something inside me. I had spent too many years being passive, too many years waiting for someone to see me for who I really was. Well, Eric, I said, my voice steady now, it looks like you've made your move. But let me tell you something. This time, I'm not backing down. His eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, I grabbed the flash drive from my bag and slammed it onto the bar in front of him. "This," I said coldly, "is the evidence. It's all there, everything. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who's behind this." Eric's smirk faltered. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You wouldn't," he muttered. But the doubt was there. "Oh, I would," I replied, stepping back. "And I will. Because I'm done playing nice. This time, it's you who's going to lose." I turned on my heel and walked out, not looking back. Eric didn't try to stop me. For the first time in my life, I knew I was in control. I had the evidence, and now it was time to bring the truth to light. The weight of the flash drive in my pocket felt like a promise, a final piece of the puzzle that would bring everything crashing down. I couldn't shake the image of Eric's face when I left him standing at the bar, still holding the evidence of his betrayal. He had been shocked, but I knew he'd fight back. The question was, how far would he go to protect himself? And more importantly, who else was behind this? I met up with Noah a few hours later. The night had settled in, and the city felt quieter than usual, as if the calm before a storm had taken hold. I could feel the storm building inside me, the adrenaline mixing with the uncertainty. This wasn't just about Eric anymore. It was bigger, much bigger. Noah's workshop looked even more like a hacker's den than usual, the dim glow of multiple screens casting sharp shadows around the room. He barely looked up from his computer as I entered. "You ready for this?" he asked, his voice low, focused. There was no excitement in his tone, just determination. His hands were already flying over the keys, setting up a secure connection to a server I didn't understand but trusted him to navigate. "You sure you can get us in?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The task ahead of us wasn't small. We were about to break into a secure facility in the Swiss Alps, a place no one was supposed to be able to access without the highest clearance. The facility was the core of everything, the heart of Dr. Vance's plan, the AI system she and Eric had set into motion. And now, we were going to infiltrate it. Noah paused, glancing up at me with a smirk. "You think I've been sitting around here for years learning this stuff just for fun?" He didn't wait for an answer. "I've got a backdoor into Horizon's system. If we time it right, we can bypass their security protocols and shut it down." "But," he added, "this isn't going to be easy. The clock's ticking." I nodded, the urgency of the situation settling in. The AI system they had weaponized was nearly ready for deployment, and the window to stop it was closing. We had 48 hours to get to the core, disable the system, and expose everything before it went live. After that, it would be too late. "Let's move," I said, my voice stronger now. Noah's eyes flicked back to his screens, the rapid typing of his fingers echoing through the room as he continued working. An hour later, we were sitting in a darkened van, parked far enough from the entrance of the facility to be unnoticed. The plan was simple: get in, access the control room, plant a virus to disable Horizon, and get out. Easy enough on paper, but reality was always more complicated. "You sure you're good with this?" Noah asked, his eyes catching mine as we sat in silence. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "I've already lost everything. I'm not going to let them get away with this." The words felt like they carried the weight of everything I'd given up, all the years I'd spent in the shadows. I had nothing left to lose. This was my moment to rewrite everything. Noah glanced at the screen in front of him, where a map of the facility appeared in real time. He quickly highlighted our entry point, a hidden maintenance door on the east side, marked by a small icon. "This is our way in," he said, his fingers already setting coordinates. "You'll have to move fast. Once we're in, there's no turning back." I nodded. The time for hesitation was long past. Noah started the van, and we made our way down the winding road that led up to the facility. The closer we got, the more oppressive the feeling became. This wasn't just an underground research facility. It was the epicenter of a new world order, the heart of the tech that could change everything. Horizon wasn't just any AI. It was capable of targeting specific individuals, entire regions, with military precision. And if we didn't stop it, the world would never be the same. When we arrived at the facility, we parked in a spot far enough to avoid detection. We were on foot now. My heart pounded as I followed Noah, the cold mountain air biting into my skin. The towering structure loomed in front of us, the facility's harsh lighting casting long shadows over the snow-covered ground. Noah led the way, moving quickly but quietly. We reached the maintenance door, hidden in the shadows of a service alley, and Noah quickly got to work on the keypad. Within moments, the door clicked open, the faint sound of the lock releasing the only noise in the otherwise quiet night. Inside, the facility was a maze of sterile white halls, corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. I followed Noah's lead, keeping my breathing shallow and my steps light. We were getting closer to the core now. My mind raced as I tried to calm the adrenaline coursing through me. Every step brought us closer to taking down the system, to bringing everything into the light. But I couldn't shake the nagging thought in the back of my mind. What if we were too late? What if someone was already here? Noah led me through a series of locked doors, each one opening with a quick swipe of his tools. Finally, we reached the security control room, a large, fortified space at the center of the facility. The walls were lined with screens displaying live data from across the globe. Soldiers moved in and out of the room, but their attention was focused elsewhere. "This is it," Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Get to that terminal and plant the virus. We don't have much time." I took a deep breath, my hand steady as I walked toward the terminal. The moment I sat down, I could feel the tension in the air. The magnitude of what I was about to do settled on me, but there was no turning back. I had to finish what I had started. I plugged in the flash drive and watched as the virus began to upload. The screen flickered, the system fighting against it. But with Noah's help, the walls fell. Every security measure, every safeguard that had been put in place to protect the AI crumbled. But just as I thought we were safe, the alarms went off. Bright red lights flashed across the room. "Shit," Noah cursed. "They know we're here." I stood up, panic threatening to overtake me. "What do we do?" "We run," Noah said simply. The sound of footsteps grew louder as guards rushed toward the room. We had moments to escape. "Move," Noah urged, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the exit. We ran through the halls, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the chaos. The lights in the facility began to flash, the alert blaring in my ears as we sprinted down the hall, not looking back. We reached the maintenance door just as the facility's security team swarmed in from the other side. "Go," Noah shouted, shoving the door open. We bolted outside, the cold air slamming into our faces as we ran. The van was parked up ahead, just a few hundred feet away, and we could already hear the sound of the guards chasing us, their footsteps growing louder. Noah jumped into the van, quickly starting the engine. I climbed in after him, slamming the door behind me. "Go," I shouted, adrenaline flooding my system. Noah sped down the road, our tires screeching as we raced away from the facility. The alarms faded behind us, but the reality of what we had just done hung heavy in the air. We had done it. We had taken down Horizon. But the battle wasn't over, not yet. We still had to expose the people who had orchestrated it all, and I was just getting started. The tension in the air felt almost suffocating as I stood in front of the high-tech facility, nestled deep in the Swiss Alps. The jagged peaks of the mountains surrounding us were shrouded in a cold mist, and the facility itself sat like a silent fortress, its metallic exterior glinting ominously in the low light. My heart was pounding in my chest, every nerve on edge. We had done what we set out to do, break into the core of Horizon's system and disable it. But now we had one final task, confronting the person who had masterminded this entire operation. Helena Vance. I had known her once, back when I had been full of hope, fresh out of grad school, eager to change the world. She had been one of my mentors, someone I looked up to in the field. But somewhere along the way, that idealism had given way to ambition. It wasn't just about saving lives anymore, it was about control. And that was where everything had gone wrong. I had no illusions now. Helena wasn't the woman I had once respected. She was a ruthless manipulator, someone who saw the world as a game of power, one in which she would stop at nothing to come out on top. And I knew she was the one pulling the strings behind Eric's sudden rise, feeding him the data he needed to make himself appear like the hero. Noah was at my side, his fingers moving quickly across his tablet, keeping track of the facility's security system as we moved deeper inside. "We're in," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Helena's office is 2 floors up. She's there, waiting for you." I nodded, my mind racing with everything I had learned over the past few days. I had the evidence, I had the truth. But confronting Helena, taking her down would be more than just about exposing her. It was about reclaiming everything she had stolen from me, everything I had worked for. We moved quickly through the dark corridors, the faint hum of the facility's machinery the only sound filling the space. It was strange to be here, this sterile, lifeless place that had once felt like a place of hope for me. Now it was nothing more than a cold, calculated operation for power and greed. Finally, we reached the door to her office. I could hear the soft murmur of voices from inside, though I couldn't make out the words. Helena was never alone. She always had someone at her side, her network of powerful contacts at the ready. But tonight, it wouldn't matter. Tonight, she would have to face the consequences of her actions. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. There she was, Helena Vance. She was sitting behind a large, sleek desk, her sharp features illuminated by the dim light of the room. She didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, her lips curled into a thin, calculating smile as she looked up from the stack of papers she had been reading. "Well, well," she said coolly, her voice smooth and calm, as if this were just another ordinary meeting. "I wondered when you'd show up." "You've been busy, Helena," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. "Manipulating everything, pulling the strings from the shadows, feeding Eric my work, using my life's mission to further your own agenda." Her smile didn't falter. "You're a smart woman, Caroline, but you've always been too idealistic. You've never understood the true potential of your work. It's not about saving lives. It's about shaping the future. I understood that long ago." "Shaping the future?" I scoffed. "By using my humanitarian efforts as a weapon, you've turned everything I've done into a tool for control, for power, for profit." Helena stood up, her movements graceful, almost predatory. She walked around the desk, her heels clicking against the floor with every step. "Power is the only thing that matters in this world, Caroline. You should know that by now. You've spent your life fighting for the wrong causes, for people who will never change. You've been wasting your time." "No," I said, my voice unwavering. "You've been wasting mine. I built my career on trust, on the belief that there was still some good left in this world. I dedicated my life to helping people, even when it cost me everything. And you?" I pointed at her, my eyes narrowing. "You've turned that into a commodity. You've turned it into something dangerous." Helena's gaze hardened, her eyes narrowing as she took a step closer to me. "You're too naive, Caroline. You don't understand the bigger picture. This system I've built, Horizon, it's going to change everything. It's going to save the world in ways you could never imagine. You should be thanking me." "Thanking you," I repeated incredulously. "For destroying everything I've worked for? For taking the most important thing in my life and turning it into a tool for destruction? You're insane." Helena's smile returned, but it was colder now, a glint of something darker in her eyes. "I'm not insane, Caroline. I'm just doing what you couldn't. I'm taking what you built and making it work. This system will shape the future of warfare, of surveillance, of everything. It's too important to stop now." "And you?" she shrugged, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're just in the way." "You're wrong," I said, the rage boiling in my chest. "I'm not in the way. I'm taking it all back. You're going to answer for what you've done. You and Eric both. It ends tonight." Helena's eyes flickered for just a moment, surprise, maybe, but her composure quickly returned. "You think you can stop me? You think you can stop Horizon? It's already too late." But as she spoke, I saw Noah move to the terminal behind her, his fingers working at lightning speed. The virus I'd planted earlier was already uploading. The countdown had started. I looked back at Helena, my gaze unwavering. "It's already done," I said, my voice filled with conviction. "You've lost. Horizon is shutting down, and everything you've worked for is going to crumble." Her face twisted in a brief flash of panic before she regained her composure. "You think this is over? You think I'll just sit back and let you—" The lights in the room flickered, the hum of the system around us suddenly sputtering, as if the facility itself was coming to life. "It's over, Helena," I repeated, more softly now, but with a finality that echoed in my chest. The countdown finished, and everything went dark. The last of Horizon's systems went offline. For a moment, the silence felt deafening. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of Helena's footsteps, retreating into the shadows, her rage palpable, but I didn't move. I didn't need to. Noah, I said, my voice steady now. It's done. Yeah, he replied, looking up at me, his expression somber. It's done. We had taken down the system, but I knew the fight wasn't over yet. There was still more to expose, more to fix. But tonight, we had won. And that was enough. The morning after our confrontation with Helena was a blur of adrenaline and exhaustion. The facility where Horizon had been housed, the one that had been the center of so much manipulation and secrecy, was now nothing but an empty shell. I could feel the weight of the mission sinking in as I stood in front of the government panel. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the files in front of me. It was a moment I had never anticipated, but had come to realize was inevitable. Noah was at my side, a quiet presence, but his eyes were alert, scanning the room with an intensity I couldn't ignore. The panel before me, however, was the real challenge. A mix of military officials, government agents, and lawyers, all sitting in a room that was far too clinical for the weight of the accusations hanging in the air. I had seen the faces of people like this before, the ones who spoke in riddles, who twisted truth into something unrecognizable. But today, I wasn't the one in the hot seat. Today, it was time for them to face the truth. The room was silent for a long moment before one of the members, a stern-looking man with sharp eyes, finally broke the quiet. Ms. Anderson, thank you for joining us. I understand this situation is complex, but we need you to explain, in your own words, how you became involved with the Horizon system. What exactly did you uncover? I exhaled slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for, but it still felt surreal. The weight of the evidence on that flash drive, the betrayals I had uncovered, and the family I had lost along the way, all of it had led to this. I didn't uncover anything, I began, my voice steady. What I found was a system that should have never existed. Horizon was never meant to be weaponized. It was created with the intention of humanitarian aid, of helping people, of saving lives. But someone saw it as a way to control, to manipulate the world for profit. And they used my work to do it. They used me. A few of the panelists exchanged glances, the tension in the room palpable. I could see that they were listening, but I knew they weren't yet convinced. They wanted answers. They wanted proof. I've been working in conflict zones for years, I continued, the words flowing more freely now. I've saved countless lives, worked with refugees, and coordinated relief efforts. But when I started noticing discrepancies in the data, I dug deeper. That's when I found it. Horizon had been hijacked. Dr. Helena Vance, someone I once trusted, had taken my protocols and repurposed them. She turned a humanitarian project into a tool for global control, and she used my brother, Eric, as her pawn. The mention of Eric's name sent a ripple through the room. I didn't care. The truth was coming out now, and it didn't matter who was implicated. One of the other panel members, a woman with dark-rimmed glasses, leaned forward, her voice cutting through the air. Your brother, Eric Anderson, is connected to these claims. You're saying he used your work for personal gain? I nodded, my voice firm. Yes. Eric has been using my work for his own benefit. He has been exploiting my efforts in the field, taking credit for everything I've done. And now, he's been involved in a security breach involving classified data. I've already given you the evidence. Noah slid a USB drive across the table, the one containing all the files, the proof of everything we had uncovered, the hacking, the forged credentials, the illegal transfers of data. It was a small piece of technology, but it held the weight of everything I had worked for. A man from the panel picked it up and inserted it into a nearby terminal. The screen flashed to life, displaying the confidential logs that detailed Eric's involvement in the breach, the communications with Dr. Vance, the transfers of sensitive data, all of it laid bare for the world to see. There was no denying it now. Eric's involvement, his manipulation of the truth, was all there. The room fell silent as they reviewed the files, the realization sinking in. One by one, the panel members exchanged glances, their faces hardening as they saw the depth of the deception. Finally, the man who had spoken first looked up from the terminal. This is damning evidence, Ms. Anderson, but there's still the matter of your involvement. You've claimed you were used, but the question remains, how did you not know? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. I trusted the wrong people. I trusted my brother. I trusted Helena. I thought that if I worked hard enough, if I did enough, it would make a difference. But in the end, it wasn't about the work. It was about power. The woman with the glasses nodded slowly, her expression shifting from suspicion to understanding. You've given us the evidence we need, but we need your testimony as well. You're prepared to stand by your statements in front of the public, to expose those responsible. I'm prepared, I said, my voice unwavering. This isn't just about me. It's about stopping this from happening again. It's about ensuring that people like Eric and Dr. Vance can't exploit good intentions for their own gain. The room was still for a long moment, the weight of my words settling in. Then the man with the sharp eyes spoke again, his tone softer this time. You've done what no one else had the courage to do. We'll make sure this is heard, Carolyn. We'll expose everything. The relief that flooded through me was immediate, but it was fleeting. There was still so much to be done. Eric would have to answer for his part in this. Dr. Vance's manipulations wouldn't go unpunished. The world needed to know the truth. As I stood up to leave the room, I felt the weight of the past few days lifting from my shoulders. But I knew the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Weeks had passed since the testimony. The public had finally learned the truth about Horizon, about the betrayal, the manipulation, and the power that had been wielded behind the scenes. Eric, once hailed as the family's golden child, was now facing the consequences of his actions. Dr. Vance was under investigation, her career in shambles as her involvement in the scheme was laid bare for the world to see. The fallout was immense. Eric's name, once synonymous with success, had become a symbol of greed and deception. The company he had built, the empire he had tried to create off the backs of others, was crumbling. My family, too, had finally started to acknowledge the truth, though the apologies were long overdue. They were no longer the perfect facade of success, but just as broken as everything they had tried to hide. I had refused any leadership positions offered by the government, by the agencies that had taken my testimony seriously. I didn't want to return to a system that had allowed people like Eric and Dr. Vance to thrive in the first place. My role in exposing the truth had been enough. The rest was up to others, but there was something else I needed to do, something that, for me, was far more important than any recognition or title. I had spent my entire life working for something I believed in, only to have it taken away by those who thought power was a game. Now it was time to rebuild, to create a space where integrity and truth weren't just ideals, but the foundation for the future. The Grant Institute for Ethical Leadership was born from that need, a place where young leaders could come to challenge the status quo, to question systems of power and wealth, and learn to build their own legacies, ones based on real change, not the illusions of success that I had seen destroy so many. I stood at the front of the small classroom, watching the students file in, each of them carrying their own unique stories, their own dreams. The room was modest, nothing compared to the grandeur of the institutions I had once admired, but there was a sense of purpose in the air that I had never felt before. These students weren't here to follow in someone else's footsteps. They were here to carve their own paths. The first class I taught wasn't about leadership in the traditional sense. It wasn't about titles or accolades. It was about accountability, about what it really meant to lead. Not with power or ego, but with integrity. It was about understanding that true leadership came from the ability to make difficult choices, to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. Leadership isn't about what you have, I told the class, my voice steady. It's about what you give. It's about the difference you make in the lives of others, and how you hold yourself accountable when the world tries to tell you that success means something else. I paused, letting the words settle in the room. I could see the light in their eyes, these young minds, eager to make a difference. They weren't like me when I first started out, unsure of my place in the world. They already knew what they wanted to change. They just needed the tools to do it. As I walked around the classroom, observing their engagement, I caught sight of the old photograph my mother had given me years ago. It had always hung in my parents' home, me as a child, standing beside my father, a picture of innocence and hope. It was a symbol of who I had once been, of what I had once believed in. But now, it wasn't just a relic from the past. It was a reminder of everything I had fought for, and everything I was now building. After class, I sat in the small office that overlooked the campus. sipping my coffee as the first of the day's students passed by. It had been a long road to get here, but it felt right. This was my legacy now, not the one my family had tried to build for me, but the one I had forged with my own hands. My phone buzzed on the desk, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from Rebecca, the journalist who had helped expose the corruption within Horizon. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Heard from your dad lately? He's been asking about you. Thought I'd pass that along." I stared at the message for a moment before typing a response. "Thanks, but no thanks. I've got my own family now." I put the phone down, a small smile tugging at my lips. For the first time in my life, I was free from the expectations that had once defined me. Outside, the students were gathering around the campus, talking, laughing, making plans for the future. I watched them for a while. The realization that I was doing the right thing settling deep in my chest. I didn't need titles or approval from people who never truly understood me. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. This was my legacy. It wasn't about power, wealth, or the world's idea of success. It was about truth. It was about giving a future to the next generation that was built on honesty, integrity, and a refusal to play the game of false legacies. And as I watched the students interact, full of passion and hope, I knew I had made the right choice. The future was in their hands now. And for the first time in my life, I was truly at peace with that.